Aviation planes are generally safe, but rare moments can bring unforeseen challenges, putting pilots to the ultimate test. These captivating instances showcase the true grit of aviators as they execute emergency landings, ensuring the safety of their passengers and crew. From mechanical failures to fuel shortages, these 20 greatest emergency landings captured on camera offer a cinematic glimpse into the incredible ingenuity and courage pilots display when faced with adversity. Join us as we explore the details of the most amazing emergency landings and near crashes ever recorded. Number 19. The Miracle on the Hudson River. US Airways Flight 1549 crash landing on the Hudson River remains one of the best captured on camera. Growing up, one would never think that a simple flight on January 5 would be such a memorable one. During the takeoff from LaGuardia Airport, the Airbus A320 hit a flock of geese, which damaged both engines and led to a life-threatening situation for pilots Sully and Skiles. With little in the way of propulsion, they knew that a dead stick landing was imminent. After deciding to return to LaGuardia, Sully immediately realized that the aircraft was dropping too fast to reach the airport. Thus, making a rather courageous decision, he reported to the air traffic control that he would try a very risky and almost impossible water landing on the Hudson River. Against all odds, the daring water landing proved successful, resulting in 0 fatalities and few injuries.
I saw the first ferry and I could see the wheelhouse. I felt like, okay, we're really going to be okay. There was a sigh of relief.
The National Transportation Safety Board later praised the pilot's choice, acknowledging it as the most appropriate option. The incident gained widespread attention, inspiring a movie called Sully, based on the remarkable event. US Airways Flight 1549's emergency landing in the Hudson River remains a testament to the skill and composure of the pilot, turning a potentially tragic situation into a remarkable tale of survival and heroism. Number 18. The Hawaii plane crash. In 2014, a Cessna Grand Caravan plane crash in Hawaii was experienced by many people and led to the development of fear of flying small aircraft. This sad occurrence was during a flight with 9 passengers from Molokai to Honolulu. When the plane was still climbing, there was an explosion sound and the aircraft stopped climbing immediately. For the passengers to have their best shot at surviving, the pilot expertly tilted the plane and brought it down with the right side up on the water. Fortunately, one passenger, Ferdinand Puentes, recorded the entire sequence of events as they unfolded.
So many things just happening, it's is it for real, is this really happening?
His footage revealed how the passengers prepared for the impact and remained remarkably composed during the landing. Upon opening the door after landing, water surged in, filling the cabin to their ankles. However, the passengers stayed calm and orderly as they disembarked from the aircraft. One passenger managed to swim to shore while the others awaited assistance from the American Coast Guard. Although everyone survived the ordeal, tragically, one traveler, Loretta Fuddy, the state health director for Hawaii, lost her life. The exact cause of her death remains uncertain, with some reports suggesting heart failure in the water. The incident, captured on video, offered a unique perspective on how the passengers' composed response and the pilot's quick thinking contributed to their survival. Number 17. The Airbus A380 lands in a storm. Imagine waking up as a pilot only to find stormy weather glaring back at you from the forecast. Undoubtedly, a moment of grumbling ensues. With so many lives at stake, navigating difficult conditions in the air must be an immense challenge. However, there are extraordinary pilots, like the one who skillfully operated an Airbus A380 amidst Storm Eunice's strong winds in the United Kingdom. While other aircraft diverted to safer airports, this remarkable pilot remained undeterred. In 2022, the weather at London Gatwick Airport was nothing short of extreme, as captured by an adventurous YouTuber. Torrential rain and fierce gusts compelled all aircraft to put landing on hold for a nerve-wracking 40 minutes. Go-arounds were commonplace, and countless planes faced cancellations or redirections to alternate cities. However, amidst this challenging scenario, an Emirates flight on an Airbus A380 exhibited remarkable patience, calmly waiting outside Brighton in a holding area for 45 minutes. The pilot braced against wind gusts, reaching an astonishing 122 miles per hour. Undoubtedly, it was a turbulent and hazardous journey, but the pilot's expertise and composure prevailed. With nerves of steel, they executed a successful landing that undoubtedly left passengers and observers in awe. Number 16. JetBlue Flight 292. The most terrifying part about flying is knowing that a single nut, bolt, or small equipment can sometimes be enough to cause a devastating accident. You have to hope that engineers are on their game when performing service checks. In 2005, during a JetBlue flight from Burbank to New York, the nose gear of the aircraft became dysfunctional, and hence it had to make an emergency landing at the Los Angeles International Airport. The flight plan was set, and it was flying 6 crew members and 140 passengers from Long Island to New York, a distance of approximately 2,500 miles. However, within just a few minutes, the flight crew noticed an error message on the monitoring system.
But apparently a problem with the nose gear. It may have been intended to land here at Long Beach this afternoon. They did declare an emergency, and as you can see by that low pass they did,
The nose landing gear would not retract, and ground personnel confirmed it was at a 90-degree angle to the left. That was different for landing, so the plane couldn't continue to its destination. Instead, the captain made an emergency landing at Los Angeles International Airport. They chose this airport because it had excellent emergency support services, better field conditions, and a desirable runway length. To ease the load on the landing gear and reduce the risk of the plane catching fire, the pilot had to zip around in the sky, performing figure eights to burn off some fuel. Eventually, the aircraft touched down without incident. The nose landing gear tires deflated and tore apart, but that was about it. According to the resultant investigation, it was found that anti-rotation lugs were fractured and separated, and 2 other lugs also contained cracks. Number 15. Aloha Airlines Flight 243. When thinking of Hawaii, one usually imagines an idyllic island environment. However, April 28, 1988 was far from ideal for Aloha Airlines Flight 243 on a route from Hilo to Honolulu. Boeing aeroplane had been used for well over 89,000 takeoffs and landings itself, twining its design life. Total flight hours were approximately 35,000, most operating in high humidity and high salinity conditions in Hawaii. Such conditions caused a noticeable impact on the aircraft's strength and durability of its constructions. Wear and tear increased, but employees of Aloha Airlines did not see it when doing pre-flight checks. Later in the flight, part of the roof on the aircraft's left side ruptured and opened, causing an explosive decompression and tearing off a large section of the roof. Confusion followed, and the pilot, without any hesitation, took the plane towards the nearest airport to Malea, Maui. Happily, he avenged and professionally made a perfect landing with a damaged plane with this terrible hole in it. Unfortunately, the flight attendant Clarabelle Lansing died from the collapse of the roof, but the other passengers and the crew members of the flight somehow, fortunately, were not harmed.
Airworthiness directives are very complex and read like a legal document. Aloha needed to have someone who could read that document and interpret it into plain English for the mechanics, the wrench turners. That never happened.
This was a major wake-up call for the airline business and received lots of negative publicity, but insisted on positive change and enhanced safety to increased extents. Number 14. Southwest Airlines Flight 1380. The New York to Dallas is a regular line, which has many flights in a single day. Nonetheless, the same route is not without extraordinary experiences. On April 17, 2018, Southwest Airlines Flight 1380 experienced major challenges. In an episode during the takeoff, the left engine's failure had profound effects. An enormous part of the inlet and the component of the cowling either entirely detached or received significant damages, and parts of it fell off. They were dispersed over the wing and the fuselage. At this time, loose items and equipment crashed to the floor.
We had a very large bang. We had multiple warnings going off in the cockpit and a very severe vibration throughout the entire plane.
The cabin began to depressurize after a window exploded. Unfortunately, one of the board passengers was partially thrown out of the plane and perished, and 8 other travelers got minor injuries. However, the pilot demonstrated intense and actual efficiency in handling calamities, which is commendable despite the terrible experience. They could steer the aircraft with the functional wing and land at the Philadelphia International Airport. That was a splendid landing under such conditions, which was a relief. It was one more illustration of the truth that an experienced pilot can open himself to potentially catastrophic risk if he is not adequately trained and spurred by corporate time pressures, and that airline ground crews and maintenance personnel constitute a wall between passengers and danger. Imagine a jet preparing to land when ice transforms into slush, obstructing the fuel flow in the aircraft's fuel oil heat exchangers. Get ready to dive into the incredible story of British Airways Flight 38. Number 13. British Airways Flight 38. When it comes to flying, occasional issues with aircraft are not unheard of. However, British Airways Flight 38 stood out due to its unique problem that surfaced before the touchdown. The flight had covered almost the 8,100-kilometer route from Beijing to London without any apparent issues. However, as it approached the destination, things took an unexpected turn. Throughout the journey, the flight path remained relatively cold, and the crew diligently monitored the air quality to prevent the fuel from freezing at low temperatures, specifically avoiding the critical negative 40-degree mark. However, the crew felt a false sense of security when the temperature stayed around a constant negative 34 degrees.
At 720 feet, the right engine rolled back. 7 seconds later, the left engine rolled back. The autothrottle attempted to command greater thrust.
They assumed all was well, not knowing that small amounts of water within the fuel had frozen despite its average temperature. As the jet prepared to land, the ice transformed into slush, obstructing fuel flow in the aircraft's fuel oil heat exchangers. This caused the engine to stop responding to commands for more thrust, putting the pilot in a challenging position. With quick thinking and skillful maneuvering, the pilot managed to glide the plane toward the ground, but it made contact slightly short of the runway. Remarkably, all passengers and crew survived the landing, with only one person suffering a significant injury and 46 others experiencing minor injuries. This incident served as a compelling reminder of the complexities of flight operations and the importance of thorough preparation for various scenarios. Number 12. Airbus A320 Lufthansa almost crashes during crosswind approach. Winter storms pose a significant problem to car owners when traveling, especially in the northern hemisphere. However, winter storms are not only disastrous to cars. Similarly, aeroplanes have a challenging ride during such weather occurrences. On this day in 2008, a strong winter storm struck Central Europe, and those on board a Lufthansa Airbus A320 destined for Hamburg were in for the ride of their lives. There were certain weather conditions when the Lufthansa plane approached the Hamburg airport. It had to pass through crosswinds moving at an estimated 56 miles per hour. This was a rather hard episode to manage, but the pilot must be commended for his efficiency in handling the ordeal. The winds blew extremely hard when the pilot was trying to land the plane for the first time. He tried, but the aircraft glided and slid roughly on the runway before the pilot had to withdraw from the attempt. To passengers who were aboard, this was a very tense situation. The previous landing attempt was marred by wind shear that made the plane's left wing drop as it jerked violently, coming in for a landing on the runway. As one can imagine, everyone on board was worried about the second try. One of the passengers accessing the online social platform said that the ordeal caused many passengers to be induced with numerous emotions, almost to the extent of shedding tears. However, the 39-year-old pilot received praise for his remarkable ability and composure in handling the challenging situation. He safely landed the plane during the second landing attempt and emergency ascent. This attempted landing became one of the most dramatic instances ever recorded in the history of German domestic aviation, as noted by a representative for the German Organization for Flight Safety. Number 11. Emergency landing in Poland. In 2011, Captain Tadeusz Rona demonstrated incredible skill and bravery by landing his Boeing 767 at Warsaw's Frederick Chopin International Airport. Despite a major issue, the landing gear was completely non-functional. The situation was extremely tense and challenging, with 231 passengers and crew on board. Captain Rona, however, remained modest about his heroism, believing that any pilot in his position could have managed a safe landing. Even after knowing all passengers were unharmed, he reflected on what he might have done differently. During the ordeal, the aircraft had to circle for over an hour as ground staff and pilots worked frantically to find a solution. Passengers were aware of the emergency, which added to the anxiety. When the plane finally touched down, smoke filled the air, and passengers were quickly evacuated to a safe distance. Angelika Borowska, a witness, described the scene as a mix of fear, tears, and prayers, followed by immense relief and joy once they were on solid ground.
The president of the airline said there was no panic among the passengers because the crew prepared them well for a rough landing. An airline spokesman said all passengers were treated at the airport's medical center as a precaution, but nobody on board was injured.
Experts later discovered that the central hydraulic system had failed, which prevented the landing gear from extending. Captain Rona noted that despite flying the aircraft 500 times before, this was the first time the undercarriage had ever failed to open. Number 10. Florida man lands a plane. The Florida man stories are hard to beat in strange and amusing news. However, on August 19th, 2022, a new twist emerged with an unusual incident. Remy Collin was piloting a 1956 Cessna 182 when he encountered an unexpected engine failure during routine maintenance. Faced with this critical situation, Collin had to make a rapid decision. With the engine out of commission, he opted for a crash landing. Instead of choosing a remote area or an open field, Collin decided to land the plane in a neighborhood. The mishap was attributed to a simple yet crucial mistake. He failed to check the fuel gauge properly, leading to the plane running out of gas mid-flight. Realizing he couldn't reach the airport, Collin decided to land on a seemingly empty road. Unfortunately, this decision led to the aircraft crashing into a front yard, damaging a section of the fence and 2 palm trees on the property. While Collin was lucky to survive the crash and no one else was hurt, the incident quickly made him a local celebrity for all the wrong reasons. It wouldn't be surprising if he faced legal consequences for his unexpected landing. Number 9. The Cessna 172 incidents. Flying, as with any other activity, is always associated with safety, and 2 accidents involving Cessna 172 aircrafts are a perfect example of possible catastrophes and proper training. For instance, in 2020, a new pilot at Buttonville Airport in Toronto made a dangerous mistake while flying a Cessna 172M during the first solo flight. He failed to manage the aircraft's speed and control when attempting to land, and the plane gained abnormal speed and hit a hangar. Thankfully, the pilot was not injured, but the aircraft was the same as the hangar. It underwent a lot of damage. About a year later, in 2022, the mishap was more severe in Miami. A Cessna 172 lost power while en route A1A. He tried to make a forced landing on the Haulover Inlet Bridge, but before doing so, had an accident with a car. This accident led to the injuries of 5 individuals, 3 of whom were on the flight. Regrettably, a fatality was recorded, while another patient had to be transferred to a trauma hospital. Number 8. The plane runs out of gas. Ever been in a car and ran out of fuel? Now, imagine being in a plane mid-air and only discovering very little fuel left. A small plane pilot failed to estimate the fuel required and had to crash land on I-640 East Highway near Washington Pike, Knoxville, Tennessee in 2020. This was likely risky, but by a twist of probation, the pilot could set the aircraft down without crashing into the cars or any other objects. Though 2 lanes on eastbound were available, the rest had to be blocked for some time. They say the pilot, evident from having to wait for a friend to bring fuel for the aeroplane to fly it back, must have felt embarrassed. Crossing the airport, ending, and taking off on the land in the middle of the highway are unforgettable events for any pilot. Number 7. The Gimli Glider. On July 23rd, 1983, Air Canada Flight 143 faced a rare and dangerous situation between Montreal and Edmonton when the Boeing 767 ran out of fuel. This unprecedented event was unusual for such a large jet, and neither pilot had been trained to handle a fuel depletion emergency.
Our beautiful colored engine and flight instrument displays simply went black.
Fortunately, Captain Robert Pearson had extensive experience with gliders. Using his glider skills, he improvised glider-like maneuvers to navigate the aircraft. He managed to make an emergency landing at a former RCAF base in Gimli, Manitoba. To everyone's surprise, the landing site had been turned into a drag racing circuit with spectators present during a race. Despite this challenging scenario, Pearson executed a safe landing, making the event one of the most remarkable emergency landings ever recorded.
I heard on the West radar frequency, he said, one of the 767 says, he's down okay, he's in one piece, and that's when our cheer went up.
An investigation later revealed that a human error in fuel measurement caused the incident. Air Canada was transitioning from imperial to metric units, which led the ground crew to need to understand the pilot's fuel request in pounds instead of kilograms. As a result, the aircraft had far less fuel than required for the journey, turning a preventable mistake into a serious crisis. Number 6. Private plane makes emergency landing. One evening, an incident occurred where a small, single-engine aircraft crashed into the Susquehanna River on a flight from New York State to Harrisburg International Airport.
Harrisburg Tower, inside Taylor line.
The crash site was in what is now considered the Lickdale section near 3 Mile Island, about 2 miles from the downstream slopes of Lower Swatara Township, Middletown, and Royalton. However, the reason for the crash has yet to be ascertained, as it seemed the engine failed and the plane plunged into the river. The priority in the minds of the rescue team in identifying the aircraft was to pull it up from the water. Fortunately, all the people on board were saved and everyone became happy and relieved. Notably, the 2 passengers on board the Piper PA-46 could climb out of the plane and stand on one of the wings among them, getting off the aeroplane with minor injuries. The passengers most probably felt genuinely grateful for being alive and avoiding a more severe tragedy.
I beat River Rescue out there and I made sure they were fine, and then I got the lady on the boat because she was pretty shooken up and sobbing.
Number 5. Out of the plane. On July 29th, 2022, a dramatic emergency landing occurred during a skydiving practice flight. The pilot and co-pilot, whose identities remain unknown, were conducting training when the co-pilot, known as Crooks, attempted to land the aircraft. Crooks aimed to qualify as a chief pilot and was assigned landing duties. Unfortunately, during the final approach, the plane experienced a hard landing, causing severe damage to the main right landing gear and fuselage. Despite the damage, the jet stayed airborne and was diverted to another location for a safer landing. The chief pilot took control, but Crooks appeared overwhelmed by the situation. After the landing, Crooks apologized and expressed a need for fresh air. In a shocking turn of events, he made the sudden decision to jump out of the back of the aircraft, tragically ending his life. The damaged jet veered off into a field at the airport, but the pilot managed to land it successfully despite the distress and shock caused by Crooks's untimely death. Though the pilot emerged unharmed, the incident was deeply distressing due to the unexpected and tragic circumstances.
Charlie was born to fly. From the time he was a little kid, it just lit him up. It was always his passion.
If you thought the dramatic exit of the plane on July 29th, 2022 was surprising, brace yourself, because we're about to reveal something even more shocking: a landing on a North Carolina highway. Number 4. Landing on North Carolina highway. Imagine being a new pilot and making an emergency landing on a crowded highway, and air travel can seem challenging after such an upsetting experience. The same is true with Vincent Frazier, who had this bad experience on the 4th of July in 2022. He was a new pilot with less than 100 hours of flying experience. One day, his small plane developed a problem and lost power over North Carolina. Incredibly, he had to land on a busy highway surrounded by traffic.
She started to die and started to kind of sink fast. And I was like, oh, okay, this is real. I'm having an engine failure.
The Swain County Sheriff's Office captured the ordeal using GoPro footage they shared on Facebook. Vincent is seen skillfully maneuvering the plane, narrowly avoiding power lines and passing close to several vehicles before making a successful landing on the road. He even managed to steer the aircraft off the main highway and onto a smaller street. Despite the intense situation, Vincent emerged unharmed, much to everyone's relief. Sheriff Curtis Cochran praised his flawless landing, considering the circumstances. For Vincent, a Florida native and former military personnel who had just received his pilot's license the previous fall, this survival story is truly remarkable. Number 3. Plane catches fire at Miami Airport. In 2022, a Red Air flight from the Dominican Republic encountered a terrifying incident at Miami International Airport. As the plane attempted to land, its nose landing gear disintegrated, causing a fire on the runway. Fortunately, emergency personnel quickly extinguished the flames and rescued all 126 passengers and crew. Remarkably, there were no fatalities and only 3 people required minor medical treatment, while the rest were safely transported back to the terminal by bus. Authorities found that the gear collapse led to the fire, which could have been much worse if not for the prompt response from emergency services, especially given the reported fuel spills. Witnessing a burning aeroplane was alarming for everyone involved, significantly impacting their perception of air travel. Number 2. Emergency landing due to engine performance issues. The technological age has greatly benefited accident investigators, as horrific incidents are often captured on camera, helping to establish the facts. In one case, footage was uploaded to YouTube showing the flight crew preparing for an emergency landing, though the specifics of the plane and its destination remain unknown. The video shows the crew telling the passengers that the aircraft will make an emergency landing in approximately 9 minutes. The steward came to the microphone and politely commanded the passengers to sit sit down and buckle their seatbelts. The video records the circumstances under which the engine blew up outside the window, the scene that the author of the video found terrifying, yet not fatal, as the captain remained quite composed. This plane crash-landed safely, and the passengers were taken back to the airport on a bus. Everyone clapped for the successful landing. Another involvement was in 2015 when a SkyWest Airlines jet encountered a landing gear problem while arriving at Los Angeles International Airport. The distance before taking off the plane, with 43 passengers on board, made it difficult to deploy the left main landing gear.
We were a little nervous. It was very fast. We knew as soon as we missed the airport the first time, we knew they were going to dump the fuel.
Following the situation where the landing was performed without the gear, people necessary for rescue operations stayed around the airplane. Everyone disembarked the plane and was taken to the airport by bus without any mishap. The captain stated that there were no casualties, and although the runway was shut down for nearly the whole day, it was later operational in the afternoon. Airline mechanics were set to inspect the aircraft to determine the cause of the landing gear issues. Number 1. Emergency landing from a stuck clutch. In late 2022, a pilot faced a harrowing situation when a stuck landing gear required an emergency landing without wheels at Aldinga Airfield, south of Adelaide. Flying a Beech E-55 Baron, the pilot spent approximately 2 hours circling the airfield to burn off excess fuel before attempting the landing. During this time, he had already informed the authorities, prompting the arrival of at least 3 fire trucks and police to assist. The pilot skillfully managed to land the aircraft on the airfield without any wheels, sliding smoothly across the gravel. Daphne Pengilly, a nearby resident, described the scene, noting that she had heard about the plane's trouble and decided to observe. She saw the plane flying in circles, initially with one nose wheel and one wing wheel down. As the fire units arrived, the pilot executed a series of flybys, retracting the landing gear and making additional passes before completing the landing. The sound of the propellers and the plane's underside scraping against the tarmac filled the air as the Beech Baron stopped. Remarkably, the pilot emerged unharmed, with no scratches or injuries. He declined an interview, but his successful landing highlighted his skill and composure despite the challenging circumstances. From the nerve-wracking moments of pilots fighting against nature to the extraordinary skill required to bring aircraft safely to the ground, these stories highlight the incredible bravery and expertise of those in the cockpit. Despite the dramatic crash landing, it's amazing to see that everyone on board survived with only minor injuries. This serves as a powerful reminder of the resilience and quick thinking of pilots in the face of adversity.